You're a concept artist?
I am.
What'd you concept?
Across a lot of things, the Dwarven costumes, quite a few of the weapons. Orcus was one of mine. Also, quite a few of the Dwarven weapons actually, and also working with Nick on some of the Elven culture stuff as well.
No way. What dwarf is your favorite?
That's a good question actually. I've got a bit of a sweet spot for Ori. Actually,
I do too.
Yeah, and I really like. I know Adam a little, and I don't know. He just seemed. I just really liked him as a character. I thought he was pretty cool. So yeah, a little unusual, a little different. So yeah, it's pretty neat.
I'm hoping he has a bigger role to play at the end of the battle as we transition into future story.
I think a lot of the dwarves, obviously, it takes time to give the dwarves all their chance. But I think over the 3 films, a lot of the dwarves that perhaps didn't feature so strongly in the first film are going to get their moment, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you start seeing it happening already. I mean, I thought Balin was fantastic as well, actually. Really good. But I love them all. They're a great bunch of guys. They really are. Really nice guys.
So, break it down. One dwarf, how many concepts do you have to go through before the one is locked?
Well, what do you reckon, Nick? It can be, like, for Thorin, like for his beard design, I mean, his beard and hair, I did over 50. And that was just me. There was other designers working on it too. So, sometimes, particularly for some of the really hard characters, like Thorin didn't come easy.
That Thorin right there.
Yeah, because he's a really important character, and they really wanted to get him right. And we played around with a lot of different options. Whereas someone like Ori, they got him pretty quick. Like I think within 6 or 7 designs, that was it. He was locked. So with the beard and hair. But I think we did something like about 500 beard and hair designs, and in under 2 weeks. It was crazy stuff.
So, okay, break that down. Around 500 beard designs, how many go to 3D sculpting or maquettes?
It doesn't. Generally, we do Photoshop. If you look in the books, you see we did a lot of Photoshopping. We take the actor, paint up some beard and hair, and then we generally work like that. And then Peter, Fran, and Philippa would discuss. If they liked something, then it would get marketed onto the actor's bust of their head so that they could walk around it, get a sense of the volume. And then if that was good, the hair was carefully peeled off. They would then start to finish all the prosthetics. And then the hair department would take care of designing the rest of it from the photographs of the bust. So it's quite an elaborate process.
Just to get before any cameras that have even been bought.
So it was pretty full on, but I mean obviously it's pretty amazing to design for the dwarves. So it was really exciting.
So there was 2.5 years about done with Guillermo.
Yeah.
What did everybody just hit reset when the whole MGM?
Well, I don't know if there was any conscious we're going to redesign everything. There was never any that never came down to me anyway. It was kind of like an accumulative process where obviously Peter was wanting to put his mark on his film, and so we started some design, and then as we went along we ended up doing more and more design and more redesign. And so it was kind of an accumulative process, and there are still elements of some of the Guillermo design as well in parts, but it really was just kind of a process. The cool thing about what happened was that we'd spent 2 years with Guillermo. We'd explored a lot of options, and I guess that gave us a chance to shortcut a little bit in terms of where Peter wanted to go, because he had a lot of stuff to look at already. That was kind of how it went from our perspective. From the Weta guys, it might have been a bit different with maybe Alan and John. I'm not sure.
Was there any difference on this film as compared to the first trilogy?
Well, I didn't work on the first trilogy.
Okay.
I was around when it was getting made because I'd started when Return of the King was in filming, and I mean there was a lot of changes in terms of technology.
Right.
I mean, Rings had a lot of people. There was a lot of handmade props and so on, whereas these days we utilise a lot of 3D milling technology for some of the really complex, like some of that dwarven stuff is so complex. Now you can make it by hand, but the time...
It's easier just to hit print and you model it in 3D.
Yeah, but then here's the trick. You definitely get someone taking that model and then doing a pass over it and giving it the sort of hand craftsman feel. Otherwise it just feels like a piece of something off a production line. So it's a mixture of techniques to get something that feels lived in and aged, which is what Rings was so good for.
Did female artists work on the female characters, or kind of the more feminine, like Elvish, versus male artists working on kind of the harder dwarven designs? Do you see any kind of that going on?
No, not so much. I would say that Lindsay Crimmer, who's one of our women designers, we noticed that she had a lot more luck designing for the handsome dwarfs. And I'm just speculating here that maybe she was putting in a bit of extra time with those guys, but it was interesting that her designs really resonated with that look. So maybe there is something to that. But in terms of things like the elves, like Gladriel and Toriel, myself and Daniel and Nick, we all sort of worked on those characters as well as the dwarfs. You just change gears a little bit. The important thing is having. It is really important to have mixed gender designers. You want a woman's perspective on some designs, just like you want a guy's perspective. I mean, at the end of the day, great design is great design. But I do think that people approach things in a different way.
Right.
And I would never want to just be working with an all guys team. That's not enjoyable to me at all. I think it's interesting what women bring in their own way.
Everybody in the chat is like, that's Paul. That's Paul. Are you Paul?
I am Paul.
So how do people know your name already?
Hopefully it's not a drug conviction or anything like that. I'm not sure actually. I guess, I've been a Weta for 10 years, so maybe that's it. But I wasn't on Ring, so I was just an extra on Return of the King. So for me it was kind of a big deal to step in on The Hobbit and know that was the legacy that you were starting to walk into. That was pretty intimidating. And working with Alan and John, I mean, holy cow, those guys are, I grew up thinking these guys are just some of the most talented artists around. So...
Now, is that your fandom talking because you've been seeing their drawings forever, or is that actual process talking? You've worked with these guys, you've seen them work. Initially
fan, but then when you see them work, then it's like you're just blown away. It's like
really?
They are just phenomenal.
What about seeing them work is so great? What sets them apart?
Part of it is, I mean, obviously they are incredibly experienced, so they're so gifted with their pencil, man. It is so beautiful. I was just about reduced to tears one day when I was working up a design for some elven armour, and John Howe was on the same brief. We got given the brief in the morning. We were meant to come back in the afternoon and show where we were at. And this was pretty early on. I'd only really met John very briefly, and I showed him my work in progress. It was a digital painting. It was getting
like
there.
4 hours later, yeah.
And John unrolls this A1 poster-sized pencil sketch of this elven warrior, from here to here, nearly life-size. I was tearing up. I was like, I can't compete with that. It's just... So that was it, I went back and but it was hilarious. It was just like, oh my God, that's the difference between me and someone like John.
Yeah.